And if the chosen one was never being punished, but prepared? What if the suffering you've been carrying isn't a sentence, but a setup? What if the silence you've been walking through isn't abandonment, but alignment? There are moments in life when everything feels like it's falling apart, when prayer feels unanswered, when pain becomes routine, and yet, beneath the surface of that chaos, something holy is unfolding, something sacred, something divine. That pain you've been hiding, the one you don't talk about, the ache in your spirit you've learned to silence, it's not a curse. It's your confirmation. It's the evidence that something greater is being formed in you. Because in God's design, pain is never wasted. There is no punishment in His plan, only process. And whether you realize it or not, you are deep in that process right now. You see, the chosen ones are not formed in comfort. They are not built in applause. They are shaped in the wilderness, in the hidden places, in the moments where the only voice they can hear is God's. And even that voice can feel distant. But just because He's silent doesn't mean He's absent. Just because you're suffering doesn't mean you've sinned. Sometimes, suffering is simply the soil in which your destiny is planted. There are no wasted tears in heaven. Not one moment of heartbreak is forgotten. The late nights, the unanswered prayers, the isolation that you've mistaken for rejection, none of it is random. All of it has purpose. All of it has weight. You may feel like you're standing still, like you've been overlooked, like everyone else is moving forward and you're frozen in the same place. But what if this isn't a pause? What if this is the preparation? So many people think they are being punished when really they are being positioned. They see pain and assume it means they are off track. But God often prepares you in private for what He plans to do with you in public. That's why it hurts. That's why it's quiet. That's why it feels like you're alone. Because something in you is being refined, and refinement is never comfortable. This process isn't meant to break you. It's meant to build you. Every spiritual battle you've faced, every moment you questioned your own worth, every door that slammed shut, each one was a whisper from heaven that you were never ordinary. You were marked. You were set apart. And when you are set apart, you are also set through the fire. The enemy wants you to believe this pain means you've done something wrong. He wants to twist your perspective so that you run from the very thing meant to transform you. But the truth is, this pain is not evidence of God's anger. It's the fingerprint of His preparation. If you've ever asked, why am I suffering? Why do I feel so far from God even when I pray? Why does it seem like I'm always going through something no one understands? The answer might not be what you expect, because the process of becoming who you were born to be rarely feels like a blessing while it's happening. It feels heavy. It feels lonely. But it is holy. You are not being punished. You are being trusted with the weight of destiny. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here right now. Not by accident, not by the algorithm, but because you were meant to hear this before everything changes, because something is about to shift, because something is being revealed, and it starts right here. Before we go any deeper, just pause. If something in your spirit is already stirring, don't ignore it. That's not emotion. That's confirmation. You didn't find this video by scrolling. You were led here. This is alignment. This is timing. This is part of the plan. So if you feel it, if this message is already speaking to the pain you've been carrying, go ahead and subscribe right now. Don't wait. And in the comments, just write one line. I feel this in my soul. That way the algorithm knows the chosen ones are waking up. That something real is happening here. That you're not alone. He was just a boy, quiet, invisible, with a weight on his chest and a soul already tired before life had even begun. People said he was too sensitive, too emotional, too fragile, but they didn't understand the depth of what he was carrying. It wasn't weakness. It was weight, and not just any weight. It was the weight of a calling. His name? It could be Michael, or Mateo, or maybe it's your name. Maybe this story isn't about someone else. Maybe it's about you. From an early age, he felt everything. Every word hit deeper. Every silence echoed louder. He could walk into a room and feel the atmosphere shift before anyone said a word. Some called it drama. Others called it oversensitivity. But what they didn't see was that this wasn't a flaw. It was a gift, a spiritual sensitivity he never asked for, and no one ever taught him how to carry. He learned to hide his tears, to sit in the back, to keep quiet, even when everything inside him was screaming for understanding. The other kids didn't get it. The adults around him were too distracted to notice. And over time, he began to believe the lie, that something was wrong with him, that he was cursed, broken, left out on purpose. But deep down, something kept whispering, something beyond logic, beyond emotion. It said, "This is not punishment. This is preparation." The childhood trauma he endured wasn't random. The rejection he faced wasn't a mistake. The pain he carried alone, night after night, was never meant to destroy him. It was shaping him. It was divine training. Training for something no one else could see. Yet, while others celebrated, he was being tested. While others laughed, he was listening. While others chased the world, he was being set apart by heaven. It didn't feel fair. It didn't feel right. But it felt real. The deep emotional pain, the loneliness that never left, the sense that he was born for something he couldn't explain. It was all there, from the beginning. He would cry in silence, wondering why God felt so far, wondering why no one saw his heart, wondering if he was forgotten. But what he couldn't see then was that his story wasn't being ignored. It was being written, carefully, intentionally. With every broken moment, the author was crafting a message that the world would one day need to hear. He wasn't being overlooked. He was being hidden, protected, preserved. The world wasn't ready for him yet. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't ready for the world either. Because before God sends you out, he brings you in. Before you lead others out of their pain, you must learn to survive your own. And that survival, that endurance, that quiet fight, it becomes the foundation of your purpose. What looked like abandonment was alignment. What felt like punishment was preparation. What seemed like silence was strategy. Because heaven doesn't rush the ones it calls. And when the time is right, everything you thought was your weakness becomes your weapon. And as the boy grew, so did the calling. So did the weight. And one day, he would come to see that none of it was by accident. Not the pain, not the loneliness, not even the silence. It was all part of something far greater. Then one day, everything shifted, without warning, without explanation. It started subtly, just moments, a number showing up over and over. 11:11 on clocks, receipts, street signs. At first, he thought it was coincidence, but it didn't stop. It followed him. Then came the dreams, vivid, magnetic, filled with colors and symbols he couldn't explain. Portals, gates, voices he couldn't quite remember when he woke up, but that left his chest burning like something had been placed inside him during the night. He'd hear certain words and feel chills shoot down his spine. Words like chosen, alignment, light. Something was happening, and even though no one around him could see it, he couldn't ignore it anymore. It was like his soul was waking up, and his old life no longer fit. He tried to talk about it, to explain the feelings, the signs, the strange synchronicities, but they looked at him with concern. Some mocked him. Others just quietly pulled away. Friends stopped calling. His family grew distant. He began to feel isolated again. But this time, it was different. This wasn't the same kind of loneliness. It wasn't emptiness. It was clarity. Because what looked like rejection was redirection. This was not a breakdown. This was the beginning of his spiritual awakening. The deep pain in his soul had started to open doors to things he never imagined. He began to see patterns in the chaos, messages hidden in the mess. He questioned everything he thought he knew about God, about himself, about what this life really is. But these weren't questions rooted in doubt. They were born of hunger, a hunger for truth, a hunger to finally understand what he was really here to do. One night, exhausted from trying to make sense of it all, he stumbled on a video. He didn't search for it. It just showed up. The title struck something deep inside. He clicked, and within moments a phrase hit him so hard he had to pause and catch his breath. It didn't hurt, it healed. It was like the words were reaching past his ears and speaking directly to his spirit. It wasn't just a video. It was confirmation. He didn't cry out of sadness. He cried because, for the first time, he felt seen, like someone, somewhere, understood the fire inside him. It was then he started hearing the whisper, "You're not from here." It would echo at random times, in dreams, in silence, even in crowded rooms. It was soft but sure, not a thought, a knowing. He began to see that everything, every loss, every tear, every dark night of the soul, was not wasted. It was alignment. It was elevation. He wasn't losing himself. He was being revealed. And maybe, If you're hearing this right now, you know exactly what that feels like. Maybe the signs have been following you too. The numbers, the dreams, the quiet pull toward something you can't explain. And if that's the case, don't stay silent. Pause right now and comment just one thing. I feel this in my soul. Let's find each other. Let the chosen ones unite. Because you were never crazy. You were always being called. You were never just surviving. You were being shaped. Every scar you carry was never meant to shame you. It was meant to show you who you really are. Molded in the dark, pressed in silence, refined without applause. While others were out celebrating, chasing approval, collecting temporary wins, you were bleeding in places no one could see. And while they slept, you were awake, facing invisible pressure, wrestling with questions that had no answers. But now, it's starting to make sense. The pain didn't come to punish you. It came to prepare you. It was never meant to destroy you. It was there to sharpen your sight. That suffering gave you vision. The nights that broke you also birthed discernment. The silence wasn't empty. It was training ground for spiritual warfare. What you thought was abandonment was actually God removing noise, distractions, and people who could never walk where you're going. While others ran in circles, you were being stretched into depth. While they were being entertained, you were being enlightened. It felt like isolation, but it was elevation. Because you cannot carry divine purpose with surface-level strength. You needed foundation. And that only comes through fire. The betrayal you endured, the heartbreak, the spiritual warfare that no one else even noticed. It was all curriculum, not punishment, a school, designed by heaven to develop the version of you that could handle the weight of destiny. This wasn't about surviving pain. It was about unlocking power. And the power was already inside you. The pain just revealed it. And now, you don't see the world the same. You don't speak like everyone else. You don't react like you used to. Something in you has changed. You notice what others miss. You discern what others ignore. You see the hidden motives behind pretty words. And you feel the presence of God in places most people rush past. That's not paranoia. That's perception. And perception is the gift of those who've walked through real fire. The very wounds they mocked are now your wisdom. The silence they called weakness is now your strength. The ache you once begged to remove is now the very place God speaks to you the clearest. Because pain with purpose purifies. It awakens. It activates. You are not broken. You are being activated. What once made you question your worth now confirms your calling. Every moment you thought you were falling apart, God was actually putting you together in a way this world could never understand. And now, as you begin to step into the clarity of what this was all for, you start to see. This has never been about being punished. It has always been about being trusted. Trusted with perspective, with truth, with the type of spiritual authority that doesn't come from titles or stages, but from surviving the dark night of the soul and still choosing the light. And even now, the process isn't done, because transformation is not an event. It's a progression. And you, chosen one, are still unfolding. It was never punishment. It never was. You thought God was angry with you. You thought the silence meant rejection. You assumed the pain was proof that you were forgotten. But now, with eyes finally opened, you can see what it really was. It was God protecting you. It was the universe carving out what didn't belong in you. It was heaven placing you through divine fire, not to burn you, but to brand you, to mark you, to awaken the parts of you that the world tried to numb. This was not about punishment. This was preparation for your spiritual destiny. Everything you walked through, the silence, the isolation, the spiritual warfare no one ever saw, was all part of a holy alignment. You weren't cursed. You were being covered, hidden from what you weren't ready to carry, hidden from people who could have destroyed what God was building inside you, hidden not because you were weak, but because you were sacred. And now, you can't go back to sleep. Not after this. Not after everything God has revealed. Not after everything your soul has endured. Once you've been awakened, you cannot unsee. Once you've tasted divine truth, the shallow waters of this world will never satisfy again. You were chosen. You were handpicked to carry weight, to speak life, to walk paths that most people would never survive. You're not here to blend in. You're not here to chase what everyone else is chasing. You're here to disrupt darkness, to break cycles, to shift generations. And that comes with a cost, but it also comes with a covering, because when God appoints you, He also equips you. But now that you know, you also carry responsibility. You're not a victim of the process. You're a vessel of the purpose. And if the fire didn't destroy you, if you're still breathing right now, then that means there's still more to do, more to speak, more to become, and more to protect. Because whether you know it or not, there is an enemy, and he's strategic, he's subtle. He doesn't always show up as fear or failure. Sometimes he shows up as comfort, as distraction, as confusion wrapped in beautiful lies. And what if I told you that right now, there's a weapon being used against you? Not a physical weapon, but something far more dangerous. Something that's working every day to dull your spirit, to delay your purpose, to disconnect you from your true calling. And the worst part, you don't even see it coming. That's what's coming next. Because in the next message, we're going to expose exactly what the enemy is using against you, and why most people never notice it until it's already taken root. So if you've made it this far, if something in your spirit is on fire right now, don't keep this to yourself. There's someone else out there right now, still thinking they're being punished, still believing that God has forgotten them, when in reality, they're just like you, chosen, called, and in the middle of their process. Drop a comment right now and say, I'm ready for the next calling. Let it be a declaration. Let it be a confirmation. Type it out loud and claim it over your life. And while you're here, subscribe to this channel. Click the bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear this truth, someone who's questioning their worth, someone who needs to know they were never cursed. They were being crafted. They weren't being punished. They were being prepared. This is not entertainment. This is a spiritual transmission. You didn't just watch a video. You received a revelation. If your heart is pounding right now, if your spirit is awake and your eyes are clearer than they were before, that's not coincidence. That's confirmation. That's heaven reminding you who you are and why you're still standing. So don't scroll past this moment. Comment now. Subscribe to this channel. Share this with at least one soul who's in the fire right now. Someone who's been questioning everything and just needs to know they're not alone. We are the chosen. We walk through fire not to be destroyed, but to be refined, to shine like gold. And this is just the beginning.